All right, hopefully without the reverb this time. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Code Council second quarter meeting. We had a little hiccup there on June 19th, but we are live today on July 10th. The time is now 10:05 a.m. I'll call the meeting to order. Kevin, if you'll please call the roll for purposes of quorum.
Matt Tebow.
Here.
Ben Keller.
Present.
Michael Weber.
Present.
Here.
Keith Wen.
Sorry,
Here.
yeah, I'm trying to put you on. I'm not mute because I think Pat's got a
Claudia Bramer.
phone call here.
Here.
David Seeley.
Here.
Joseph Toomey.
Sure.
Joseph.
Here.
Okay. Sean Hamlin. I don't believe it's here. Timothy DeRusher.
Tim is here.
Robert Hughes.
Here.
William Tyne.
Well, this was what Peter was talking about yesterday, wasn't he? And talking about that they want to.
William Tyne, are you here? I'm going to mark him as not at the moment. Patrick Dolan. Your hand, Dominic Marinelli.
Here.
We have 12, not including Bill Tyne, and not including Sean Hamlin.
Okay, so we have a quorum. We'll move forward. First order of business on the agenda this morning, the welcome we just did, and we're going to welcome our new code development staff member, Chad Stevers. Chad, welcome to the fray. He's apparently the host today, so he's really part of the fray. Welcome, Chad. Next thing I'm going to do, I want to kick to Kevin. He's just going to run through sort of the rules of the road with the WebEx. Obviously, this is a little more difficult with the WebEx. Won't be as freewheeling. So Kevin, take it away.
Yep, so we have some special features. Obviously, everybody's going to come in mute initially. All of the public are mute, and as well as the co-council members initially come in mute. The co-council members, obviously, feel free to mute and unmute yourself. If you are going to speak, I recommend that you acknowledge, say your name, say you wish to speak. That way the court reporter has an opportunity to take down your name, and then, give a brief pause, make sure everybody can hear you, and then speak. If anyone else who does not have the ability to unmute themselves, they can chat in to either myself, Kevin Doerr-Clark as the presenter, or Chad as the host. You can let us know if you're having a technical difficulty and or have a question or have something you need to say. Other than that, hopefully it'll run smooth as the normal meeting does.
Thank you, Kevin. Just sort of detailing one thing. I can only see 5 people on my screen right now. So if you want to speak, you don't just rely on unmuting yourself. You're going to have to actually probably say your name and say that you'd like to speak so that I'll stop talking. It's a good thing, I guess I'll stop talking. All right, let's move on to Agenda 2. Draft minutes of March 6, 2020. This is a consideration of a motion to approve. Are there any, you all received the draft minutes in your packets or on the SharePoint. Are there any changes that need to be made to the draft minutes? Okay, I hear and see nobody jumping up and down, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 6, 2020, please?
Joe Toomey makes the motion.
Joe Toomey makes the motion. Can I have a second, please?
Pat Dolan seconds it.
Sounded like Pat Dolan made the second there. Okay, on the motion, we'll take it on a voice vote. So I guess everyone will have to unmute, and this will be very loud. Anybody, all in favor of approving the draft minutes of March 6th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, let's, the motion carries. The draft minutes of March 6th, 2020 are approved. And let's remute everybody, Kevin, if anybody didn't. Sounds like we're good, though. All right, agenda item number 3, review of more restrictive energy code filing procedure. And then we have a presentation by NYStretch on the New York Stretch code. And then we will take up votes on the City of Beacon's local law number 2 of 2020 and Hastings on the Hudson local law number 8 of 2020, both of which are more restrictive local energy standards. So I'm going to turn it over now to China from our Code Development Office and have her give a brief overview to the Council of the statutory underpinnings related to approving more restrictive local energy standards, which is slightly different than more restrictive local standards. So China, please take it away.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm China Clark. And at the December 6, 2019 and the March 6, 2020 meetings, the Code Council acted on several petitions related to more restrictive local standards for construction, also known as MRLS. At that time, since there were some new members and it had been quite some time since an MRLS had been presented to the Council, the division took the opportunity to provide some background on the MRLS process. After the March meeting, the division received 2 filings of a more stringent local energy conservation construction code. Because the process for filing a more stringent energy code differs from an MRLS petition to the Uniform Code, the division has prepared this short presentation to provide some background on the more stringent energy code process. Energy Law 11109 outlines the requirements for adopting a more stringent energy code. The process is as follows. First, municipalities must promulgate or adopt local laws or ordinances imposing the more stringent energy code, and then they must file a copy of such codes and amendments with the Code Council within 30 days after the promulgation or adoption. If the municipality files within the 30 days, the municipality may enforce the more stringent energy code until and unless the Code Council determines the local energy code is not more stringent than the New York State Energy Code. If the municipality fails to file within the 30 days allotted, the municipality may not enforce the local energy code until and unless the Code Council determines that the local energy code is more stringent. The process for adopting a more stringent energy code differs from the process for adopting an MRLS to the Uniform Code, as outlined by Executive Law 379, in that if the more stringent energy code is filed within the 30 days, the municipality may immediately enforce the provision, unlike an MRLS to the Uniform Code, where the municipality must wait for the Code Council's determination. Additionally, a filing for a more stringent energy code does not have to include special conditions prevailing in the municipality or verify compliance with the accepted engineering and fire prevention practices, as is required for an MRLS to the Uniform Code. Historically, the division has handled filings of a more stringent energy code in the following manner. Those municipalities whose filing was received within the 30-day time frame are notified that the filing is received and that they may enforce the more stringent energy code until and unless the Code Council determines it is not more stringent than the energy code. The division then performs a review of the filing to ensure the code is more stringent and presents the findings to the Code Council to make a determination. If the filing was not received within the 30-day time frame, the municipalities are notified that they may not enforce the local energy code until and unless the Code Council determines it is more restrictive than the energy code. The division then performs the review and presents any findings to the Code Council for the Council to make a determination. Some of the more stringent energy code filings are based on the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority's NYStretch code. The division has worked with the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, also known as NYSERDA, with the development of this code. The NYStretch code provides a simplified process to determine if the local energy code is more stringent. And today we have Marilyn Dare here from NYSERDA to speak to the council about the New York State Stretch Code. Marilyn?
Thank you, China. Hello, everyone. My name is Marilyn Dare. I'm a Senior Project Manager at NYSERDA with specifically. Along with me is Chris Corcoran, my manager, who is the Manager of Codes, Products, and Standards at NYSERDA. Next slide, please. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the methodology that we use to determine the endings that NYStretch has over the 2020 ECCCNYS, who did that analysis, what it's compared to, similarities and differences from work that we did for the Department of State on cost effectiveness for the 2020 ECCCNYS, and then give you a summary of the results from our analysis. Next slide, please. NYStretch was developed as a readily adoptable local energy code for communities to adopt. As an overlay to the state energy code, it follows the same format as that code. So as you can imagine, the stretch is to require slightly more efficient equipment or measures. And in some cases, it adds provisions that aren't currently covered by the national model codes. The provisions that are in NYStretch include more improved window performance, increased insulation requirements, air leakage testing, air barrier commissioning, reduced interior and exterior lighting power densities, additional spaces with lighting controls, and it introduces and requires compatibility for renewable and electric vehicle readiness, so that new construction is prepared for renewable and electric vehicle charging stations. Additionally, it includes commercial kitchen equipment efficiencies, which aren't currently covered by the model codes or the New York State Code. Next slide, please. So now I'll get into the analysis that we did to determine the stringency of stretch. Slide, please. So the NYStretch savings analysis, as I mentioned, builds off the work that we did for Department of State in determining the cost effectiveness of the 2020 Energy Conservation Construction Code of New York State. Vidaris and Resource Refocus did that work for Department of State, and it was used to demonstrate that 2018 IECC as modified by the 2020 ECCCNYS and ASHRAE 90.1 2016 as modified by the 2020 ECCCNYS were equivalent to the 2020 ECCCNYS. And so we were able to demonstrate and use the ASHRAE compliance path because it's equivalent to the IECC for the commercial and the residential compliance path. Next slide, please. So the similarities to that analysis that we did for the for the 2020 ECCCNYS includes obviously the same consultants. It used the prescriptive and mandatory requirements in the analysis. And for the commercial provisions, it used 6 of the same building prototypes. And for the residential, used the same small family and single family, and low-rise multifamily residential building prototypes. Except in one instance, which I'll get into in a minute, it used EIA, which is the Energy Information Administration statewide average utility rates. It's had the same weather files and the same cost data as the 2020 analysis. Next slide, please. As for the differences, these were the significant ones. The NYStretch analysis added 4 commercial building prototypes so that approximately 73% of the state's total building stock would be represented in the analysis. For the residential analysis, New York City was analyzed separately from the rest of Climate Zone 4. There were a number of reasons for this. First was the fact that the Resource Refocus determined it was necessary to use the city's 2016 New York City Energy Conservation Code as the baseline for the residential analysis, as there were insulation and fenestration requirements in that energy code that exceeded the requirements of the 2020 ECCCNYS. Additionally, there were significant differences in the construction weights and cost of energy in construction. Another difference in the residential analysis was the fact that federal standards for certain furnaces and boilers were updated during the time between the completion of the analysis for the 2020 ECCCNYS and this analysis for NYStretch. It should be noted that practically all the commercial provisions in New York City's 2016 code equaled the values in the 2020 ECCCNYS. So there was no reason to split out New York City for the commercial analysis. And in the end, the analysis supported the fact that the 2016 New York City ECC was at least as equivalent to the 2020 ECCCNYS. Next slide, please. And continue to the next. So for the comparison of NYStretch to the 2020 ECCCNYS, obviously we looked at commercial provisions first, and our commercial provisions and residential provisions separately, sorry. In the end, the commercial savings were approximately 7% in total energy costs, more stringent than the 2020 ECCCNYS. We also looked at site and source energy, and both were more stringent than the state code. Next slide, please. Here you can see the weighted average statewide results for the commercial provisions of NYStretch versus the 2020 state code by building prototype. And again, it shows the differences by site and source energy in addition to energy cost. Next slide, please. Residential provisions, the overall efficiency was 19.7% more stringent than the state energy code. Again, we looked at both site and source. The next slide shows the analysis by site energy savings. We had a similar breakdown for source energy savings as well. Next slide, please. So the aggregated results of the residential provisions show this 19.7% energy costs, more stringent energy costs than the 2020 state code. Next slide, please. To determine the overall weighted average stringency of NYStretch compared to the 2020 state code, there was Dodge data that was used for new construction. It was analyzed to determine the commercial and residential new construction weights across the state. Using those weights with the energy cost savings that were identified, we determined the overall average efficiency of NYStretch is approximately 11% more stringent than the 2020 ECCCNYS. Next slide, please. Again, thank you. In addition to Beacon and Hastings on Hudson, which you're going to discuss today, City's 2020 Energy Code is NYStretch with New York City specific amendments. Ithaca is considering using NYStretch as part of their green building code because their goal is to be carbon neutral by 2030. And we are in discussion with several other communities across the state that are interested in NYStretch. Several towns on Long Island and in the Mid-Hudson region, several towns and some cities in Westchester County, and in the capital area, Glens Falls, Saratoga, Bethlehem actually, and Albany, and then out in the central part of the state, Manlius is looking at this as well. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for this opportunity to present this.
Thank you, Marilyn. Is there any member of the Code Council that has any questions for Marilyn?
I have a question.
That sounds like Claudia. Hi, Claudia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, and I appreciate all the information about the energy cost savings. I am wondering if NYSERDA did any kind of analysis on the construction costs related to the stretch code versus not the stretch code. Thank you.
Sure. So we did do in the determination of the simple payback and the cost effectiveness analysis, those construction costs were evaluated and determined that for, in both the case of residential and commercial construction, the paybacks were less than 10 years when you compared the savings to the construction costs. The reports that are on our website do indicate the incremental cost of construction for both residential and commercial.
Thanks.
This is Kevin. I believe both of those reports were included in the submission packet, so if you did want to see that, it is in there.
Do any other members of the Code Council have any questions for Marilyn or the NYSERDA team? Okay.
So I did want to.
I have one question. This is Tim. Matt, just a quick question. I understood before that the local conditions in the presentation given by China, that there is no special requirements that are required for the energy code, which is underneath a different part of New York State law than the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code. So there's no special conditions that are necessary in order to adopt or to use these?
That's correct. There's correct. This is, I don't know if anybody want to take it, but there's no special conditions. You don't have to do accepted engineering practices. You simply have to submit within the 30 days, and then as long as you know, the co-council does not make a determination that it's less strict, you can continue to enforce. If you miss the 30-day window, then the co-council, you cannot enforce until the co-council makes a determination. So the special conditions are not a requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. It's only the more restrictive requirement. That's it. It just has to be more restrictive.
And that's more restrictive on the whole, correct, Peniota, Kevin?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the Code Council? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to kick it back to China to introduce the two 4 action items today. China?
Aye. As I mentioned before, the division has received 3 filings for a more stringent local energy conservation code for the 2020 code that went into effect on May 12th, 2020. They were filed by the City of Beacon, the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson, and New York City. All 3 filings were received within the 30-day time frame and are therefore enforceable. So the first one is the City of Beacon is based on the New York Stretch Code without any modifications. Accordingly, and based on the presentation by NYSERDA, the division recommends that the Code Council determine that the City of Beacon's local energy code is more restrictive than the 2020 Energy Conservation Construction Code of New York State.
And Matt, this is Kevin. I just wanted to jump in quickly and acknowledge, I believe Sean Hamlin has joined. He looks like he came in around 10:22. If you would like to unmute himself and let us know that he's here. I can see Sean unmuted himself, but I can't hear him.
You can't hear me, Kevin?
Oh, now I can.
Sorry I'm late, folks.
Welcome, Sean. And I believe we have contact with Bill Tyne again, right, Sean? Right, Kevin?
Yeah, he looks like he did come back on. So, Bill, if you could unmute yourself. And
I tried to reboot my router. I don't know if it's on my end or your end, but I'm getting about every 3rd word.
Okay.
Okie doke. So we're back on the City of Beacon. Is there any discussion among the Code Council members on the City of Beacon? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So I'm going to have Peniota read a motion for us. Peniota, if you'll read the motion that I will be making. Go ahead.
Sure. For your consideration, on April 20th, 2020, the City of Beacon, the city, adopted the city's local law number 2 of 2020, which adopted the NYStretch Energy Code 2020, NYStretch, as published by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, as the city's local energy conservation construction code. The city's local law number 2 of 2020 was filed with the Department of State's State Records Unit pursuant to the Municipal Home Rule Law on April 29, 2020. On May 6, 2020, less than 30 days after the adoption of the city's local law number 2 of 2020, the city filed a copy of the city's local law number 2 of 2020 with the Code Council for the Code Council's review pursuant to Subdivision 2 of Section 11-109 of the Energy Law. On July 10, 2020, NYSERDA presented to the Code Council a report indicating that New York Stretch is more restrictive than the currently effective version of the New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code, the New York State Energy Code. I move that the Code Council determine pursuant to Subdivision 2 of Section 11-109 of the Energy Law that the City of Beacon's Local Energy Conservation Construction Code, as adopted by the city's local law number 2 of 2020, is more restrictive than the currently effective version of the New York State Energy Code. So moved.
Thank you, Penny Yoda. Okay, I make that motion. May I have a second, please?
Ben Keller seconds.
Ben Keller has seconded the motion. Kevin, if you're ready, you can read the roll for me, please.
Matt? Sorry, this is Claudia. I'm not opposed. I just have a question.
Sure. Go ahead, Claudia.
Okay, sorry about the background noise. It's my understanding that we don't necessarily need to pass a resolution adopting, right? And are we doing this just as a backstop to ensure they know they're okay?
So yeah, Claudia, that was something we discussed as a staff a few weeks back, and I came to the conclusion that I think it's the place of the Code Council to approve rather than allow approval by not acting. So we brought it before the board to vote on these, and I think we will do so throughout the future. I mean, these several that we have now and likely a few in the future are relatively, for lack of a better term, easy because they are the stretch code, or they're very close to the stretch code, and we've seen the presentation where NYSERDA has done an excellent job proving that the stretch code is more restrictive than the 2020 energy code. However, we may get to a point where there are others that are less easy that maybe aren't patterned on the stretch code. So we would want to review them carefully as both the staff and the council before approving.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, Kevin, if you read the roll, please.
Matt Thibault?
To approve, yes.
Ben Keller?
Yes.
Michael Weber?
Yes.
Vincent Rapatulo?
Yes.
Keith Wen? Keith Wen? I don't know, does anyone else hear Keith?
I do not hear Keith. Let's move on and come back at the end.
All right, Claudia Bramer?
Yes.
David Seeley?
Yes.
Joseph Toomey?
Yes.
Sean Hamlet?
Yes.
Timothy DeRusher?
Yes.
Robert Hughes?
Yes.
Bill Tyne? Bill Tyne? Patrick Dolan?
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to circle back up to Keith Wen,
Yes.
Okay, and then back to William Pine. Okay, so everybody voted but Bill for yes.
So I just got an email from Bill. I think he's still having audio problems. Can somebody from staff send him the call-in number so that he can at least call in? And with regard to that, we'll move on. I'll leave the vote open for him to vote yes if he can before the meeting's over. Okay. That's 13, so the motion carries, and the City of Beacon's local law number 2 of 2020 is approved by the council. Moving on to Hastings-on-the-Hudson local law number 8 of 2020. China, please take it away.
The Village of Hastings-on-Hudson is based on the New York State Stretch Code without any modifications. Accordingly, and based on the presentation by NYStretch, the division recommends that the Code Council determine that the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson's local energy code is more restrictive than the 2020 Energy Conservation Construction Code of New York State. That's our recommendation.
Thank you, China. Is there any questions for China or staff? Okay, hearing none, I'll kick it to Peniota to read the motion that I will be making. Peniota.
For your consideration, on June 16th, 2020, the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson, the Village, adopted the Village's local law number 8 of 2020, which adopted the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020, New York Stretch, as published by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYStretch, as the Village's local energy conservation construction code. The Village's local law number 8 of 2020 was filed with the Department of State State Records Unit pursuant to the Municipal Home Rule Law on July 6, 2020. On June 18, 2020, less than 30 days after the adoption of the Village's local law number 8 of 2020, the Village filed a copy of the Village's local law number 8 of 2020 with the Code Council for the Code Council's review pursuant to subdivision 2 of section 11-109 of the Energy Law. On July 10, 2020, NYStretch presented to the Code Council a report indicating that New York Stretch is more restrictive than the currently effective version of the New York State Energy Conservation Construction Code, the New York State Energy Code. I move that the Code Council determine pursuant to subdivision 2 of section 11-109 of the Energy Law that the Village of Hastings-on-Hudson's local energy conservation construction code, as adopted by the Village's local law number 8 of 2020, is more restrictive than the currently effective version of the New York State Energy Code. So moved.
Thank you, Peniota. That's a motion that I'm making. Can I have a second, please?
So I will second Claudia.
Sounds like Claudia seconded the motion, followed by Joe Toomey and Robert Hughes. Thank you all. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Kevin, if you'll please call the roll.
Matt Tebow.
I vote yes.
Ben Keller. Ben Keller.
Yes.
Michael Weber.
Yes.
Vincent Rappaciullo. Vincent Rappaciullo.
Yes.
Keith Wen.
Yes.
Claudia Kramer.
Yes.
David Seeley.
Yes.
Joseph Toomey.
Yes.
Sean Hamlin.
Yes.
Timothy DeRuscher.
Yes.
Robert Hughes.
Yes.
Bill Tyne.
Yes.
Patrick Dolan.
Yes.
Dominic Marinelli.
Yes.
Oh yes, 14.
Unanimously carries. Okay. we are done with agenda item 3, moving to agenda item 4, work group update. The work group has met, let's see, 4 times since we last met, so they're meeting monthly. So I'm going to call on, I believe, John Adario to give us a quick update on the work group's actions.
This is Kevin. I can do that.
All right, Kevin, go for it.
So, like you said, we met 4 times. We've just discussed 10 different topics. So it's been a pretty successful work group so far. We've drafted some technical summaries for 8 out of those 10. 2 of them are still open that we're going to use the next couple of meetings to try to come to some conclusions on those. And then we'll move forward with the remaining topics, and we're on track to have the summary document prepared in the first quarter of 2021.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to note that, yes, Wednesday was the last meeting, right? So at that meeting, you took up one of the topics is mobile fueling operations. You received a letter, which is 115 pages long, from Gas It Up, who appeared before the council last year. I believe that was shared with the work group members, of which that's, what, 6 of the members of this council. I think it is actually addressed to the entire council. So Kevin, if we could, let's send that around to the entire council so they have it and can review it at their leisure.
Will do.
Are there any questions about the work group work or any comments?
Yes, this is Tim DeRusha. I just wanted for clarity, Kevin, I don't know if you have that right handy, just so the other council members can hear and we can get this on the record. The items or topics that we've already discussed, if we could just do topic names and those, not necessarily the summary of what it is, but the topics, so that we can understand that in an overall scheme.
Yeah, if you give me just a minute, I can probably pull that up for you. But like you said, we did do mobile fueling operations. We have discussed the sprinkler heights for 30 versus 55 feet. There were also a couple of ones related to upgrades to some of the standards for sprinklers. I'm sorry, for smoke detectors. If I can get over here and pull the rest of the stuff for you. We also had new bed and breakfasts of whether or not they should require sprinkler systems. There was a couple of erratas from ICC for a fire command center errata, as well as a fire partition errata that was under consideration. 45-minute fire separation in garages was on the agenda, and I believe those are the topics that we have covered so far.
Great, thank you, Kevin. There'll be 3 more meetings before our next meeting. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none. We'll move to the public comment period. Agenda item number 5. Kevin, do we have anybody on the list who wishes to speak?
So nobody who I had prior to the meeting that registered said they wish to speak, and nobody at this moment has chatted in that they wish to, so I think we're good.
Okay, we'll give it 2 more seconds, see if anybody chats in that wishes to speak to the council today. Okay, Kevin, nothing?
Nope. Oh, yes. Oh, hold on. Sharon. Yep, give me just a moment. It looks like somebody might be chatting in. Hold on.
Can I just remind everybody, if you're not speaking, to please mute yourself? Thank you.
So we do have one person who said that they wish to speak, Sharon Herstein. Hopefully I didn't butcher the name too badly. But we, Sharon, I don't know, there's a lot of feedback coming from your phone. I don't know if it's windy, but we, I don't think we can hear you.
Okay. Is it possible for my camera to be enabled?
I guess we'd have to upgrade to a panelist, and then your video would appear, I think.
Because I wanted to show the specific building code concern. I thought a visual would just help.
I'm sorry, Kevin, are you able to mute yourself? I think the background noise might be coming from your computer.
Looks like Dom Marinelli's is also live. Mike is also live. Dom, can you mute yourself? And if not, can we mute him?
Sure.
So I don't believe we're able to allow you to share anything to the screen. I don't know if you had a particular like technical question about the building code.
Yeah, well, it wasn't really a technical question. It's just in my home, there is a building, what appears to be a building code violation. I've addressed the city, I've addressed the county, I filled out the form at the state and just never heard back from anyone. And it's just, we have a stagnant pond basically on our property. The storm drainage doesn't function properly. The drains are too high, they're clogged, there's no pitch. So I'm just trying to get it resolved. It's a terrible sanitary condition. Over time, it will likely erode, you know, the property itself. And I hoped if I showed it to this group of people that somebody could step in and provide some reason why the village and the county and the state just won't enforce the drainage code.
So what I can do, we do have a couple of different units within our Division of Building Standards and Codes that should be able to at least assist you in understanding if it is a code-related issue. We have our technical support group, and then we have our oversight group. So if I put you in touch with the technical support group, they can help identify the code provisions that are applicable. And if then you not get proper enforcement through your local jurisdiction, our oversight group can certainly help you with that. So I will, we have your information, and I will definitely pass that along.
Yeah, I had been in touch with somebody, Erica Krieger, and she had forwarded it to someone else, to Velo. And it's just, and then I filled out this form to have it inspected by New York State. And then I just never hear back from anyone. And, you know, the Bronxville Village Department of Buildings, the original engineer confirmed it was a building code violation. And then he, depending on who you speak to, he was either fired or left because he identified it as such. And then no one else at Bronxville will come and look at it. No one from the county will come and look at it. And as I said, I can't get the state to respond either. And it's, you know, there's worms, there's bacteria, there's mold. It's going to start to smell in this warm weather. You know, I invested my life savings in this property, and I just can't get anyone to acknowledge that this drainage needs to be corrected from a code perspective. I mean, any layperson or professional in a different capacity who looks at it has the same question. They say, how can this be to code? It's so obviously not right.
So it definitely is something. It sounds like you sent it into the oversight group, and I can pass along your name and information and let them know that you have inquired again about the status of your complaint.
All right. Yeah, it's a shame that the camera is not enabled, because it would be great if you could just see it. But I guess if that's the best that can be done, then okay.
Yeah, Sharon, this is John Adario. I'm the Director of Building Standards and Codes. And what I'll do is I'll follow up with our oversight unit to make sure they, usually the complaints come in and they sit there, there's a queue, but I'll make sure they reach out to you and follow up on your complaint if you did file it.
Yeah, I did. I mean,
okay.
You know, it just seems to be some kind of political hot potato. I don't know if this builder has some undue influence that would override a homeowner and resident influence, but it's just been going on for years. And like I said, I can't get anyone to come and see it. Like the village won't even come out. The county won't even come out.
No, but I will follow up with our oversight unit. But again, enforcement is up to the local municipality, but we can, if you have a complaint about them not enforcing the code, then it's certainly our oversight unit, and I will follow up on that.
So I just have a question. That's one thing that it's a phrase I've heard before when you say it's up to the local municipality. So if they've decided that stagnant water is not a violation of building code, then that's it? They just get to decide that, even though...
No, that's part of our oversight unit, is they would look at it and look at, what they should be enforcing. And that's part of the our oversight.
So is it possible for this body that I'm speaking to, or some, subgroup, is it possible then for these decisions to be overridden? Or I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, am I wasting my time? Like, is the village inspection or lack of inspection the final word, or can that get overridden?
No, they, our oversight unit would see and look at what they should be doing based on regulations that aren't really part of the code council. There's part 1203 that sets the standards that for enforcement and administration of the code. And that's what they would look at to see, and then also look at the code and what they should be enforcing. But, again, I'll reach out to oversight and see what I can find out, and I'll have them contact you.
Okay. Okay. I guess I'm still not clear then. If somebody from New York State looks at this and says, yes, this does seem to violate the drainage code, the sanitary code, whatever, there's several codes it seems to be in violation of. If New York State feels that way, then is the village of Bronxville and the county of Westchester, are they then required to address the problem?
Yes, they should be enforcing the code, yes. If it falls into that category, yes. But we'd have to look at it again.
Right. Okay. So if New York State finds that this does violate one or more of the codes, then somebody, that's the village, the county, I don't know who at this point, is then obligated to take some corrective action or some action that would lead to correction. Is that
correct?
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you
Thank you,
for your time. Okay.
Thank you, John. John will follow up.
Thank you, John and Kevin.
Okay. Kevin, is there anything else? Any other people wishing to speak?
Nope, we're all set.
Okay, moving to agenda item 6, future meetings. The next meeting of the Code Council is currently scheduled for September 25th, 2020, and then the fourth quarter meeting is tentatively scheduled for December 4th, 2020. Those have not changed, so they're still on your calendars. Agenda item 7, other business. I don't believe there's any other business to come before the council today. I want to thank everybody for their time and their patience this morning. I know that this is a little more difficult than us all sitting in, I guess, 3 separate rooms. Hopefully the public health situation gets better and we are back in one of 3 rooms in September. Hope springs eternal. In that vein, I want to have everyone, I wish everyone good health and ask you to be safe over the next few months. I like seeing all your smiling faces. So if there is no other business before the council today, going once and twice. Okay, I will move to adjourn the second quarter meeting of the Code Council. All right, hearing no objection, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe. Enjoy the summer.